All right, we are live. Welcome to another edition of Research to Reps Roundtable. I'm your co-host, Pat Ivey from Beyond Sets and Reps. And we also have Javair Gillett.
Hey, guys. How you doing, Pat? What's up, man? It's good to be back. Hope everyone's doing well. Things are good over here. I'm excited with our guest today, one of the best, and this should be a fun one.
Yeah, I know we want to hear about what you guys got going down there too, Javair. So if you can sneak some of that in there, whatever you can sneak in, sneak it in. Yeah, and we have Ted Lambrinides.
How's it going today, Pat? Excited to be on with Bryan today. There should be some great information shared today.
I'm looking forward to this one too. And our special guest here is Dr. James Bryan Mann, good friend of mine, great friend of mine. I don't know, can't say good, I have to say great. Excited about this one. You talk about research, you talk about to reps and a roundtable. Here we go. This is the man right cheer. One of his favorite songs to lift to back in the day by Mystical. If you hadn't heard it, go ahead and look it up. The Man Right Here by Mystical. Man, I still get goosebumps. Welcome to the show, Bryan Mann.
Well, thank you for having me, Pat. Long time no see, and we're seeing each other virtually here. I'm happy to be here, do whatever I can. Let's have a good one.
Let's have a good one. So let's go ahead and start this off and just talk about your love for research. Why research? Why to reps? Why is that your passion?
I just thought that there were better ways to do things. And a lot of the research that was coming out back in the 90s and early 2000s, they were all looking at where it really started with that first APRE paper was that, periodization, you'd see 12-week, 16-week cycle, all this stuff. And I'm like, I got 5. How am I supposed to take 16 and turn it into 5? And, it just seemed like the research, there was a bit of a disconnect between, and some of it, I need to say it this way, that there was a disconnect from some of the researchers, but not everybody, right? There are some people who were keyed in. But then there was a lot of people that were like, dude, we have a 5-week off season. This isn't applicable. This is great, and it's great to know what happens at 16 weeks, but we need to have research that's applicable for the college strength and conditioning coach. And we need to make sure that we're looking at things that are implementable and that they're sustainable. Because it doesn't matter if something is perfect if it can't be implemented week after week after week. That some things that are in research studies, they sacrifice, I don't know if implementability is a word or not, but they'll sacrifice that for precision where I'm going to flip it around. It's that I want to be able to make sure that the coaches can use something rather than, just stand up on a podium and say, I've got the best model of all time. I don't give 2 craps about the model. I care about winning games. So I wanted to be able to, I saw a gap that had been filled by some people like, your Bill Kramers, your Mike Stones, of course, your Andy Fries. But even then, they didn't know what was going on today and what were the current situations. So I wanted to make sure that we could put out research that was, applicable, that a coach could take and have, for lack of a better term, Monday morning value. And honestly, I'll say that probably most of my studies are not Monday morning value. They might be, 6 weeks from now value, whenever you could start up the next cycle or whatnot. But that's really what led to it because, I'm inquisitive. Hell, you had us do all those freaking questionnaires back in the day. And I had the psychological profile of a nerd. It was a collector and something else. And, where I just take those little bits of information, keep them stored in my head. And whenever something comes up, I start filling in the dots. I'm like, oh, okay. Like with the VBT, I'd read all that stuff from Berkoshansky, Roman, and then one of the guys with the M. I don't remember if it's Medvedev or whatever, but I kept seeing that MS superscript -1 or M/S, and I was like, I have no idea what this is, but it looks interesting. And then I saw the Tendo in 2002, 2001, 2002, 2003, somewhere around in there. I was legal drinking age. I didn't, but that's what I could tell you, because I remember drinking at the bar with Rick and Milo. But that's whenever we found it, man. And whenever we got the Tendo, and all of a sudden, bam, falls into place. I could go on and on about that, but and I guess the other part of it too is why. And if we go back to the childhood stuff, man, Rocky IV is one of the things that kind of made me want to be a strength coach. And it wasn't Rocky doing all of his stuff, man. It's the crap they were doing with the Russians, freaking looking and analyzing how hard he hit and what was his biomechanics. And, I'll leave the drugs off to the side because, I don't want to get, that's the athlete's choice. That's not anything that I would ever, push. But, our institutional review board might frown if you started, shooting somebody up at 3 cc's of testosterone. But but that really, that drove me. And that's what, really, I still, of course, being an American, I'm glad Ivan Drago lost, but, it was cooler than shit watching that lap, man, and then sprinting around, and I could still remember it. Those training montages, I get more excited about the Russian than I do about Rocky. So, but that's where it came from.
Yeah. So Ted and Javair, the goal is to get Bryan's hair to go from where it's kind of laid down right here.
Yeah, that's my stress level. Everybody always knew that do you talk to me or not by how high up my hair stands. So end up pulling one of those.
And if it was right here, you just keep walking.
Because I'm not going to hear you anyways. I'm too deep in thought. Of course, that also my hairline was a lot further down back then. So, yeah. It's harder to stand up the further back you go.
Hey, speaking of stress, Bryan, the research you did with the academic stress.
Yeah.
How would you apply that now with the so-called COVID stress that athletes are dealing with? Would you see a parallel there?
Yeah, I really would. And I actually wrote a lay article on Elite FTS about this. And then, interestingly enough, we just with Marcel I can't say his last name. Let me pull it up here and read it. Marcel Lopez dos Santos. So that is it. Melissa Uffring, Jay Dawes, Cody Stahl, and myself did a stress and academic and athletic performance in collegiate athletes, a narrative review of sources and monitoring strategies that, stress is systemic. So it doesn't matter where it's coming from. And some of the stresses that we're encountering with COVID are things that a coach might not think twice about. Like the stress of the athletes, their parents losing their job, and now they've got to think about how to get their brother and sister food and things like that. I think that and just here in Miami-Dade, the CDC just said that we're Wuhan now. We are the epicenter of the coronavirus. And, so there's definitely some stress that's going to be going on, not even if you don't have COVID, and even if none of your family do. Just as like, hey, when is this going to be over? What can I do? Is this person that's across the street from me? Do they have it? Oh God, they're crossing over here. What do I do? The stress levels are going to be high. And I think that right now, as people are returning to training, and some of the training obviously is getting shut down, as we know from Ohio State and North Carolina. Those two got shut down last week.
Yes.
For 2 weeks, that, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And that, for some people, is a source of stress. For me, it's a source of stress. I need to know what my schedule is for the next month, or else it's unsettling. So I think that these athletes are under tremendous amounts of emotional, psychological stress. And again, some of them, I don't know how we would track, other than talking to the athlete and being like, hey, how's your family? How's your mom? How's your dad? How's your brother? How's your sister? How's your dog? how's your neighbor's dog? Just trying to, to go in with that because, we just have to trying to think of the best way to say this. I think that this time more than any in our past is whenever the soft skills really have to come into play because we need to understand what stresses the athletes are under because we have no idea. This right now, sets, reps, weights, completely irrelevant. It's literally about survival. Javair was down here and we had just had a friend who, freaking health food nut runs, half marathons damn near every week, went on a ventilator and then he had a stroke. And so, here's this person who's extremely healthy that thinks they're bulletproof and dude, they're done. He's not dead, but it ain't looking good. So I think that right now sets, reps, irrelevant, man. Let's look at stress mitigation. Let's keep people healthy. And honestly, I think it might be a good reset, to find out what actually matters in training as we have any form of athletics, moving forward.
So Bryan,
yeah,
what do you say for the coach if they're hearing about the different stresses that the athletes are going through, academic, where they're going to live, safety, food, family back home, friends, coronavirus, and they still have some places are starting next week football.
Yeah. What
do you say to the coach that says they just got to deal with it and suck it up? So what are the dangers of saying just suck it up or having that mindset that, hey, just got to suck it up? That's life.
Man, they're going to lose their athletes. They're going to lose them to injury and they're going to lose them relationship-wise because this coach, he doesn't know what this athlete is going through. I think right now the best things that we could do is stick on the lower intensities of development. Not high intensity training. I think we got to throw out the window because we don't know what the athletes have been dealing with. They've had access to what their stress levels are. I think that we need to really start going on with some stress management techniques and teaching them about mindfulness and taking them through maybe some body scans and mindfulness-based stress reductions because that, dude, it's just too high, right? And, I know that some people believe in that cake baking theory, where if you're going to bake a cake, you're going to break a few eggs and some people are going to get hurt. Man, this is nothing, right? This is nothing like we've ever seen as far as stress level goes. And I'm going to predict that there's probably going to be a high number of ACL and Achilles tears this year, especially if coaches aren't coming back and even going to – I think that we've got to load up isometrics right now, man. I really do. I think we've got to load up ISOs on the distal hamstrings and things like seated calf raises and stuff like that to looking at like Kenneth Barr's work where we can help to strengthen the tendons because they haven't been stressed to the same extent in some great amount of time. And while there's a lot of people who are going to throw darts at the acute chronic workload ratio because they fail to see that it is a predictor of injury, it's not. I wouldn't say that there's any one major predictor of injury, but there's factors. And I think that the acute chronic workload is a factor. Stress is a factor. Hydration is a factor. Movement is a factor. I mean, the injuries are so multifactorial that if, we can't just pin down one. But I think that the coaches, man, they're saying, suck it up. Dude, their brother might be laying in a coma right now and just had a stroke. You don't know that. So I think that coaches got to tread lightly right now, man. Yeah.
I've come to believe it over the last 20 years. You say man up. It's easy to say from the outside looking in, but I tend to think that those are the types of people that really haven't gone through adversity themselves. To be honest with you, and when you're an athlete or the experiences you've had or our expertise, it helps when you've gone through the gauntlet a little bit. You can preach sleep, right?
Yeah.
Why? I started learning more about sleep because I wasn't getting any in my 20s. I was overworking.
Shit, I'm still not getting enough sleep. But that's because of the kids now. But
I had a couch in my office when I was with the Tigers. I had a couch in my office, and our head athletic trainer, Kevin Wren, I love him. He's a brother. He would tell me, "Don't sleep at the office." And sure enough, it's 2 a.m. and I'm still there working on my computer, working away, and everyone knows the grind of a baseball season. So now I'm waking up at 7, 8 o'clock to work out a little bit. Then I have, players. I'm meeting players to work out at 10 a.m. and then the game's not till 7. So you're at the field for 12 hours. So just sleep alone. But I think, just taking these pieces, and if you had a pie chart that you're covering all these little pieces, right? So like Bryan said, sleep, physical activity. I know for us in the NBA right now, we're looking at having the players, it's optional, but the players have the option now using technology. They can wear the Aura ring. So we're looking at heart rate variability there. It's a personal thing, but gosh, it would be great if we could track that and actually study it. If players, so when the Players Association and the players are confident enough in our abilities as sports scientists to use this data to help them, and they're not paranoid about it, thinking that we're going to use it against them, that's when we hit another level and we can be of more use to them. And so like the Aura ring is just one example, right? But velocity-based training, another example. I use that I've found just tracking speed, just using a Tendo unit, I've been able to identify fatigue more times using that particular piece of equipment than the force plate in their training. And so using all of these pieces of information, like Bryan was saying, and putting them all together to really identifying like, hey, this guy is overstressed. Like laying there and doing Omega Wave, might not be the answer for a lot of people. So what other things can you pull from? Or maybe if it is, just don't use that one piece to say this guy's stressed out or he's fine, because you don't know everything else that's going on. These athletes they do a really good job of a lot of them do a really good job of locking in going to work, but you don't know what's going on from a personal side either. So you think everything's fine, but you really don't know what's going on the personal side. So I think just like you were saying, the tracking, the subjective analysis, using the subjective analysis, it helps if the players take it seriously. I think a lot of people shy away from it. Even I've shied away from using them because I don't think the players take it seriously. But if you are on top of them, or you have a staff that you can get people on top of them and say, hey, tell the truth here. Tell the truth. This is for you. It's going to help us serve you better. I think you get more accurate feedback and subjective analysis, and it can be useful, right? But, there's a purpose to everything, and it's got to be a well-balanced approach.
Yeah. No, the more that you can embed to where they're not feeling like lab rats. I remember that we ran into that with the Omega Wave back in the zoo. The 10 or 12 guys that we had doing it, well, they had to come in early. They had to go do these things, and then they have to come back to me, and then I'd have to go over to Pat and talk about changes for this one individual. And, then they, so that increased their amount of time. So then it didn't work. But, the VBT, if you've got the same loads and you can embed that, then you can just track that in the velocity. And we know how that's related to autonomic nervous system status. And then, if you're tracking it and they don't know you're tracking it, then, that's one more thing. Heart rate recovery, if you can throw that in after the warm-up. If you've got the same warm-up every day and you after the warm-up you give them a 1 minute break to get water, well, then you've got a heart rate recovery, a 1 minute time that you could, that's monitoring right there. You just drop the markers on the, I can speak for the Polish system. I can't speak for First Beat or anything else because I haven't used it. But you just drop that marker and bam, you got something else that's embedded so that you can look at.
What's the heart rate? What's the heart rate percentage now that we should be working up, or, what percentage should we be working up to make sure we're getting a decent assessment of their recovery, right? So we got to get to a certain level. So
yeah, I think that I'm not so sure that, because how do I say this? I'm not sure, but I think that we need to look at if it's the scripted, so it's going to be the same every time, then I think that it's kind of irrelevant. We would want to look at the peak heart rate to see what it is, because if the heart rate's higher that day, then it's showing you that, hey, something else is probably going on, even if it's dropping off all the way. But then again, we don't know, what did they take? What did they drink? What did they not drink? And that could artificially increase your heart rate. Like right now, I'm having a freaking, not a regular do, it's a 0, right? This has more caffeine in it, in case you didn't know. So my heart rate would be artificially increased right now, so, and if some days you do it and some days you don't, so then you look at both, it's kind of like with RSI, right? Everybody man, even whenever I was younger, I was just looking for that metric. It's like, what's this one thing? Well, no, man. You got to take context into everything, because if people are looking at just RSI, well, what is that? Well, that's jump height divided by contact time. So they might get a higher jump because they spent more time on the ground, right? Or they might have a lower jump and spend less time on the ground, and they would get the same number. So, everything's got to be given into that context. You got to look at everything. It's not just one simple, we can look at this one number and track it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can, but you're probably going to be wrong just as often as you are right. So we got to just apply more context. It's not that simple. We got to have people that are really good at statistics, which I'm not. Just now trying to learn R, and that's a beast.
Hey, I'll do this. So am I. So I don't know what courses you're taking, but if
I haven't been taking a course. I've been
just been playing around on your.
I've been playing around on myself, so I haven't actually taken a course. There was a YouTube tutorial on there. And I started bashing my head against the wall. It turns out the file was corrupt for the stuff that we were using. And yeah, right. So, yeah. And then
so Coursera.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
Good stuff. Yeah.
And Patrick Ward is a good friend of mine with the Seahawks, and he is a R savant. And he's given me a guy named, I can't remember. I'd have to go to my phone and scroll through my text messages. But he was like, hey, this person's got free courses on statistics on YouTube, and he uses R. Go look at this after you learn that. And the GG plot and Tidy, and man, it's right now I'm drinking from a fire hose, dude.
So John DeWitt, who's with NASA, he's now with the Cubs, helps me out here with the Rockets. He told me about Coursera, and I mean, within this last week, every evening I'm working on that. Coursera has been great, so he introduced me to that, thankfully, because I was right there with you with YouTube.
Yeah, but dude, shoot me the course that you do. It's probably like what, $100, $200? What is it?
It's not even that. It's this particular one I'm on is you're doing it. It's a per month or per week fee, I think. So you got to get through the chapters pretty quick. Or you're going to be paying a fee. So
got it.
I'll send you. Yeah. It's been really good, but
I'll send you the stuff from Patrick. If Patrick Ward says it's good, I'm going to believe it. I always go to the people that are far better at stuff than I am. That's why, even though I never ended up connecting with you because we got that Kinesio thing downstairs, which is completely my fault. My daughter threw up whenever I was going to call you, and then I never got back around to it. So, the life with kids, it's, dude, yeah. But, I always go to the people that I don't believe in recreating the wheel, man. If Isaac Newton said, if I've seen further than other minutes only because I've stood up on the shoulders of giants, I know there's a lot smarter people out there than me. I'm going to go see what they did and try and build on that rather than start over.
Yeah.
So,
Bryan,
I
want you to talk about probably some research that I know you never published, but I think it's the best research you ever did. I'm biased though. Cheetahs, lions, and rhinos.
Oh, yeah. So basically what we did was we broke them down at how they do their power.
Talk about why, though. Why we had to come up with that.
Man, I'm trying to remember. Well, it's for the football coaches
to
be able to understand stuff. Like, this guy, you're wanting him to do this, but he ain't built like that. That's what it was. Yeah, the hamstrings. So, whenever you get down to it, we just kind of we went and used this. God, did we use the Sayers equation, or did we use that power strength ratio? Damn. So what I'm trying to remember now is basically what we looked at was how did they
one. So don't
was what
double promotion.
Man, let me go see if I can pull this up because I remember it, but I don't remember it well enough.
So I'll give some background while you pull it up. We were noticing that a certain population of the football team having hamstring injuries, and we know they were mostly our best athletes. We know they were strong. We know they were biomechanically sound. And for the coaches, they're obviously the questions start coming. Well, why are these guys getting hurt? Why are they getting injured? And so we're doing the research, and we're like, well, obviously we know volume is a variable, right? So Bryan started looking at power. He started looking at strength. He started looking at and came up with a formula. And eventually we were able to categorize no matter what position they were, if they were a rhino, a lion, or a cheetah. And cheetahs run 70 plus miles an hour, but they need rest. Lions run 55 miles an hour, but they don't need as much rest, but they still need rest. Rhinos can run about 35. We run 35 miles all day. And we're trying to explain to the coaches that you can actually have rhino. And so they're thinking, oh, well, all our offensive linemen, defensive linemen, they must be the rhinos, right? Like, no, we actually have some cheetahs that are offensive linemen. So with velocity-based training or anything like that, they can jump, they can run, they're explosive. Probably going to play on Sundays. You find it?
Yeah. No, I didn't find it. I lost a bunch of stuff from Missouri because they told me that I had box for like another month, and they didn't give it to me. Okay. So, but yeah, I remember what I ended up doing. I think was I just looked at the counter movement jump and converted it to power, and we looked at how they came in, right? So they're coming in as an initial, and then we looked at watts per kilo and did it allometrically. Right, allometrically scaled, so it was divided by the 0.67 power because, that's just what all the allometric scaling was. And I think Bert Jacobson corroborated that at Oklahoma State with football. So I just went with that. And then, so we were looking at watts per kilo. And granted, dude, I know, right, from looking at enough force plate data right now, we got some of them. I'm going to think that, it was better than what we didn't have. So the 3 standard deviations above, those were our cheetahs, the standard, the plus or minus 1, that was our, lions, those were our lions. And then the rhinos were down here, right? And they were strong, but they couldn't jump. And so strength was in there somehow. I can't remember how I had strength factored in. But whenever you get down to it, it's the springy guys for the cheetahs. Then we had the lions, and then we had the rhinos. And all of the cheetahs that we had for the line went on to the NFL. So that'll tell you something. And then some of the skill guys, you could have somebody who is extremely fast and springy, but they can't catch or cut or change direction or anything like that. So then you've got, man, did we use the 42 and the 10 times? Yeah, man. Yeah, I wish I'm looking stupid up here because I can't remember. I've had 9 concussions, people, and I drink way too much, so my brain cells are pretty well pickled. Yeah. So it's
That's why we bring you to all the conferences, Bryan, because you're our drinking buddy. That's all.
Hey, baby, I'm ready to come back to Chicago. Let me know, man. Let me know.
Hey, Pat and Bryan, when you presented that information to the coaches, were they receptive or had a better understanding of how they may need to modify practice for some of those cheetahs?
Man, I wasn't in there. You have to ask Pat. You know what? Here's one thing that I will remember, though, that I had like a date wrong on something, and it might have been on another paper, and that's the only thing they keyed in on. They didn't give to. So, man, I was so pissed off that, yeah. I don't know what happened with that. I don't remember. I just know I got pissed.
I would love to say that it went over like I thought it was going to or hoped it would, but it didn't. A couple of coaches made fun. Ha, cheetahs. Rhinos. Lions. That's real cute. Cheetahs, lions, rhinos. That's real cute. Like, I'm really trying to help you to understand that not all of if you're the wide receiver coach, you're like, yeah, well, I got all the cheetahs, right? No, you don't. Some of your guys, when they run a route, they're going to need more time to come back and recover from running that 4.340.
Yeah.
If those 40-plus vert guys, some are able, they've got a good aerobic base, so they can do it better than others. But you have some rhinos in your position. They might be the players that don't play. And a lot of them were your walk-ons. And then you have your lions. So obviously, we call them the freaks. You know who they are. They can run, they can jump, they can do it all. They're going to play on Sundays. But some of your lions might have a chance too. They might be the wide receiver that runs the mid 4.5 or the 4.640, mid 30-inch vertical, 35-inch vertical. But they can run routes. They can run practice. They can handle more volume than your cheetahs. And just trying to explain that to them, some of the coaches did understand it. They were like, all right, so I need to protect my cheetahs. Like, yeah, that's what this information is for. So how do I do that? They're asking, how do they get the right amount of reps to get better when some players can handle more volume than others? I said, that's for you to decide. I mean, I'm just giving you the information that from the numbers that we're running, we believe these guys, if they do as many reps as a rhino or a lion, your cheetahs, they're going to pop with the hamstring. And so Bryan was able to go through and chart over, go back and look at our numbers and look at injury reports and basically use that information to say, here we go. If you came up with there was a certain wattage or whatever, Bryan is
I don't remember what it was.
Whatever the number you came up with. But basically, if they were producing a certain amount of power, the likelihood at the vault, because of our practice volume, which was
nuts,
pretty high.
Yeah.
We knew what was going to, we could teach them and they could eat right. They can hydrate, they can rest, we can stretch them, we can do all strengthen, we can do all of those things. But eventually there's a threshold that they're going to pass. And inevitably they did. Yeah.
So, yeah. And, that's
I was always interested, what's the best way to easily identify, we do it through experience and using our own testing and observation, but best ways, Ted, maybe you can answer this, Bryan, for muscle fiber type to test percentages. So I bring this up because it's kind of similar in baseball. I'd be able to tell you if a starting pitcher should switch to mid reliever because they just can't go the distance. They're going to hit a wall. It doesn't matter how hard they train. They are not meant to be a starting pitcher. And so maybe they're best for mid reliever. There's a certain point, where we're trying to extend the length that they can go. If they get in trouble in an inning and their pitch count goes up to 30, now you're using statistics. After 30 pitches in an inning, if he's really struggling, what's the drop? What's the percentage drop off that accuracy? how much does that go down? So there's ways to track this and really determine the prototypical position player, right? So what's the best way to do that?
For the fiber typing, it's probably, I mean, I haven't seen anything that proved that. I mean, Ted, you feel free to hop in, but if you look at the Bosco tests, so if you go get his mat, it comes with his software, right? And it's I think it's the 60-second jump. So it's got to deal with the jump height, the decline, and everything else. And its correlation to fiber type was really high. I think the correlation was in the 0.8 to 0.9. So I'd have to see if I can look it up. Carmelo Bosco jump test fiber type. What am I looking on Bing? No, scholar.google.com. Bosco jump test fiber type. So the study with him and Pavel Komi back in 1983. The R was 0.73. So that's pretty high. That if you look at the first 15 seconds and then every 15 seconds post, he's got an equation in there, and honestly, it's already figured into his jump mat, which I've got here in a note to be able to give a sign. Or sign link. Well, not link. I can't give the link off of my files on my phone. Maybe it's under notes. Chrono Jump Bosco system. It's about $200. It's Bosco's original stuff, and it's got that figured into it. So if you do the 60-second test, it's going to give you your fiber type and. For a correlation of 0.73 without having to do a biopsy, and for $200 versus $200 per person per time, I'll take that every day of the week, man. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be a good way to look at it. Then at the same time, though, we don't know what their that's probably good enough, because we don't really need to get down into the enzymes and everything else, because that's going to get lost in the weeds. That should be good enough to tell you what their type 2 are, because the type 2 are going to have that. If it's type 2 from Ted, you're going to have to help me out here, because this is getting outside of my wheelhouse, right? Because I'm training. I'm not a hard physiology guy. Yeah. So you can fiber type by myosin ATPase staining, and and then there's another way it's like, what is the actual characteristic of the fiber with like the DHP receptor, right? For how the action potential goes in and starts the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So something that is resembling 2A from the ATPase versus it was some other way of fiber typing. And it was, I think it's how they did it back with the freaking in like the 80s. Golly. I think,
Ed Coyle has also done some stuff off of a 4 to 6 second, power test on a bike, looking at percentages of fiber types.
Yeah, that was the first one that came up. But I knew the Bosco one off the top of my head. Yeah. But either way, I think that, if you've got an idea, and that would be a far better way to do it than what I did. Just honestly, here this is, I'm not PhD at that point. I've got some stats classes. And I don't know how Google Scholar might not even been a thing back then. So just figuring it out for the best that I could. We did pretty good. Could we have done better? Yeah, I just needed to get better at search terms. And that's always, I think, the biggest hang up right now for coaches is so many times we keep reinventing the wheel, thinking that something is new, when in reality stuff has been around for freaking literally 37 years, going back to Carmelo Bosco's paper right there with maybe going back to Masahiro Kaneko. And I'm sure I butchered that name, looking at how, and I didn't read this one until freaking 2017, I think, and how he had gone through and made the adaptation, showed the adaptations for force and velocity was different, and power for different types of training. And it was kind of cool because what he thought and what he had found lined up perfectly with the zones on the 30% and 60% for strength speed and speed strength. And I was just, again, one of those times like, I was freaking right. But, but yeah, we keep reinventing the wheel, man. We need to go back and look at some of that old research. That's the foundational stuff. I mean, I've said it a million times. You want a new idea, go read an old book. You could see that, that's, you can only see 2 out of the 5 bookshelves that I've got in here, right? So go back and read the old stuff. Just because it's old, it doesn't mean it's good. I mean, shoot. The Kaneko study opened my eyes to a whole different way of doing things, which led to those posters that were up at the NSCA last week, and which will hopefully be a manuscript that comes out in the next couple of months, based off of how much Joe Cignarelli has got to edit my writing. And that's like I was saying off the air, I'm a horrible scientific writer, but my gift is. I shouldn't even say gift. Where I'm the strongest at, I think, is being able to break it down and give it to coaches in a way that they can understand and utilize. Because it's all great, and my biggest I've had a big criticism that some people are pretty pissed at me about. I'm really good at pissing people off about with JSCR. It's like the practical application is not a practical application most of the time. If I give this to a practitioner, what do? They look at it and they have no idea what this thing says. So let's make it actually about practical application and in those articles. Which, how did I get to there? I don't even remember. What were we even talking about?
Rhinos.
Oh, yeah.
Bryan, speak a lot about, obviously, velocity-based training, right? People know you do it. But there's another part of velocity-based training that I know you spent some time thinking about, and it's kind of the psychology that's associated with velocity-based training and autonomy. Yeah. And talk about that in the team environment and the importance of understanding the impact you're having, leadership-wise, autonomy-wise, all that stuff.
Well, I think it's really kind of two-sided thing with VBT. It's not, for one, I think a lot of people have taken it and they've ran it and they try to make it their own, and which is fantastic. But sometimes I think they might have screwed it up a little bit because they're trying to put it in on everything with everybody. And really, it's not something that you have to do. It's something that you get to do. And that's for 2 reasons. One is that you've got to have the requisite strength levels to be able to see massive adaptations from improvements in the velocity spectrum, and 2 is if you make it something that they have to earn, you don't value that which you did not have to work for, right? So that's a double-edged thing. Now, within the velocity-based training, I think that one of the most overlooked areas for strength and conditioning right now is, and I've been one of these people who, make it all about sets, reps, intensities, and things like that. When really, there's quantitative research and there's qualitative research, and they're different, but they're highly related, right? So, Nick Winkelman just came out with a book that I haven't read yet talking about coaching and the way that you go about things. But I think that the way, the VBT, why does it work so well? I think it's because of self-determination theory, right? And that's that 3-pronged approach that, competence, autonomy, and relatedness, right? So if, number one, I think that before anybody starts using velocity, they have to be extremely competent. You're not going to go and unleash on something that you're not good at. If somebody doesn't understand the appropriate technique on clean, you see them hold back and they're like, how was that? How was that? Was that right? Was that right? And they lose some of the aggressiveness and assertiveness that could come from that. But that goes to any, walk of being, through any type of life. I've said it before on some other podcasts and talks. It's like, you're not going to go hard on something that you're not good at in front of people because you're afraid of getting embarrassed. On a musical instrument wise, I'm messing around with the harmonica and occasionally pick up the guitar. but you're not going to catch me in front of people doing it because I suck. But it's nothing for me to hop up and go, oh, Daddy boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen. And just go on and start singing because it's something that I'm good at. So if we're not giving people something that they're good at and they're not competent, that intrinsic motivation isn't going to be coming because they're holding back because you're like, nope, that wasn't right. Do it again. Nope, that wasn't right. Do it again. They're going to get frustrated. The autonomy. Let's go relatedness first. They need to understand what is the transfer. And that's your job as a coach. If they don't understand why they're doing it, they're not going to go hard. They don't understand that, hey, this is going to have a positive impact on me because they're really not going to be putting a tremendous amount of effort to it. And then the last one, the autonomy, is that they have direct control, right? And I think that whenever, we've talked about it in different areas that, hey, the athletes have got to have some input. Right? They need to have some input on their program so that they feel some ownership into it and they're going to go hard. Well, they have direct ownership on what the load is that they're going to be pushing that day. Right? And it also allows us to have some conversations too, because if they're down for a couple of weeks in a row, we're like, hey man, what's going on? And I've had with, women's basketball, I found out that an athlete's parents were getting divorced and they were having a hard time with it, not because of them, but because of what was happening with their sibling and how hard the time their sibling was having. So then, refer out for counseling, et cetera. Golly, what was that lady's name? Debbie something, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, referring her over to her, getting her to the appropriate people to get them help. But it just allows those conversations to occur. At least for me, I use it as a tool for that with some of my teams. But, that self-determination theory, I think, is something, we tend to forget that, I've said this before, and it's not completely correct. And, honestly, I don't care. People are going to call me out. Like, well, that's not right. Blah, 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 blah. Let's flip them double birds because I just don't care. But, the programming is scientific and coaching is a humanistic endeavor. And yes, I understand that there is qualitative research and that's science too. But what I'm saying is you can't treat them like a lab rat. You've got to have a relationship with them. And that's my point there whenever I say that. I think that it comes through for the coaches, and I think the coaches understand what I mean. But then the people who are the qualitative and social science researchers, they get their panties in a bunch. Whatever. But that's I think that might be what you were getting at. If not, man, I just talked about 25 minutes on something that was completely unrelated.
No, I think that was great because we also with you when you're training the athlete, they are a person. You're not just training the weightlifter, the person who's doing agility drills, or the football player, or the women's basketball player. You're training the whole person, so you have to take into account their state. If they rest, you have to educate. You have to educate on nutrition. You have to educate on technique. And we also understood that when we're coaching the person, everything goes through their brain, right? So yeah. So a lot of times it amazes me sometimes when teachers think they're teaching information and not teaching the student. And you have to go through the brain to get to the brain. To teach them information, you have to go through the psychology of the person. And that's something that I think I don't know if I've heard you speak about that, but that's something I know you have taken into consideration, the psychology behind the training as well as the science behind the training. And if you can combine both and know that you're actually coaching a person, not the golfer or the tennis player or the football player or the basketball player, but you're coaching the person, you can access all of that information that's out there. Like you were just talking about self-determination theory, that's sports psychology. So if you can use sports psychology to help with motivation of your athletes in the weight room, you're going to get the most out of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not just one path, man, and that's everybody's looking for a magic bullet, and there is no magic bullet. You know, it's a combination of a tremendous amount of things. You know, and I think that was my biggest mistake from like age, because I started in strength and conditioning at age 19. You know, as an undergrad assistant. You know, shoot, whenever I was there interning for you at Tulsa in 2003, I'd already been coaching 5 years. You know, so like. And that was one of the mistakes that I had made early on, was just looking for one magic bullet and not realizing that it's this huge summation. It's not one thing. But then again, if anybody would have told me that, I wouldn't have listened then anyways. So I'm a hard-headed dude. You got to have a lot of extra calcium from all those concussions. So, of course, my skull isn't the density that yours is. I saw the data off the DEXA to prove that. So, yeah,
that's protected information.
Yeah, that's HIPAA. I can't start giving those bone density numbers out. If you've ever seen a DEXA scan, his was gleaming ass white. It looked like a cue ball up there on his head. So, yeah.
No concussions either. I don't know.
Yeah, right. That's probably the difference.
So, what are you working on now?
Man, so I'm. It's pretty exciting. You know, being down here at Miami is, and also not just being here with the athletes. You know, I've got a great relationship with athletics. Yeah, it's taken a couple of years to get there, but I'm doing a lot of different things with the different teams here. And I've also got a guy, you know, I've mentioned him a couple of times, named Joe Cignarelli, that, you know, in the research world, he's a legend, you know, and he's why I came here. You know, I had a complete candor. I don't know how many people know this, but my boss at Mizzou, Kyle Gibson, was going to give me a 1-year farewell tour, basically, you know, where I could kick my feet up and get paid for a year because I just had a kid. He was going to pay me out of reserve funds, and I didn't have to do anything. And then the opportunity to come here at Miami, and I sat down with Joe Cignarelli, and I'm like, I got to go. You know, the farewell tour is over. I got to learn from this guy. That's changed the way that I look at things. And so I've got some stuff on force velocity profiling that's going to be coming out, and that's something that he's worked on in 40 years. And I remember we were co-teaching a class because he's at the end of his career, you know, fourth quarter overtime, you know, he's up in his mid-70s. And here I am, you know, 40, and you know, just really starting to feel like I'm taking off academically. But I'm co-teaching a class with him until I've got the material down, because the dude's been teaching it for 30 years here at Miami. And he was doing a force velocity profile thing with it. And I was looking, and I'm like, damn, why did I never think of this? If we would just give some unloaded jumps for some of these movements at the start, we could have a full force velocity profile. And for those who are, is this audio only, or does this go up on YouTube?
It'll be both.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and, yep, this is it. So go to share screen. So this is the share. So this is one of the things that just popped up for the NSCA last week, for the NSCA Coaches Conference. Then my wife's like, hey, when are you coming home? Okay, great. Basically what we did here was they were doing trap bar deadlift. That's one of the core exercises for this particular program. Realizing that the deadlift bar was 24 inches in between, I used 24-inch PVC pipes with 90-degree elbows, glued them all up together, and put the tether at the front, had them jump. Then they went with the barbell unloaded, and they jumped again. And these are from the same height as what the handles would be unloaded. I'm sorry, with a 40 kilo, yeah, with the plate on there. And then they did one more jump. And I can't remember what the loads were. And instead of using percentage of body mass, we just went with one set because it needed to speed things up, because you can't slow down the training session for data collection, right? So sometimes sport is dirty as far as sports science goes. Well, you know, here, this is some of the stuff that we see that, hey, 60% to 100%, look, nice, tight. Everybody is like that. But whenever it gets into the unloaded conditions, we see that there's a much greater spread. And I believe that one I had that shown that the top 4 players right here on the velocity were, postseason honors winners or preseason. One of them was actually a freshman who had one of those, predicted to be whatever from Baseball America or some crap like that. I don't remember. But, looking at the velocity end. So that's one of the areas that I'm at. It's like, hey, man, let's go all the way over to the velocity end of the spectrum. And then next we'll be seeing what changes occur from the different types of training and how do these different athletes respond. Because if we give one program, right, do these guys who are velocity dominant, and if that's a primary characteristic for them, how does their velocity into the spectrum respond to this? The heavy training, is that pushing the velocity up or is it pushing the velocity down? That's one of the things. Looking at transfer indices based off of the 15 years of data that we collected at Mizzou. Looking at counter movement jump and how the different training, off of the force plates. Like I said, I've got some Pascos and I'm using force decks from Valve. That how does the training impact these different people, right? Because whenever you get down to it, I look back at some of the 15 years worth of data, a couple of the guys we screwed up, man. I'm going to say it, that, some of these guys that came in with a super low training age, that they were just multi-sport athletes. They did a lot of track. They didn't do a lot of lifting. And then we came in, we got them super strong. They never ran as fast or jumped as high. And they just happened to be dealing with, I think, the fascial system rather than the muscular system for a lot of their force dominance, right? They were just springy. But most of the people, as they got stronger, they got better up to a point, right? So if anybody was below 1.7 times body weight on their strength number, on their squat, relative squat, their I thought I turned that off. Their sprints went up, their jumps went up, and they were better. But then we didn't see that much over 2.2 times body weight. There were a couple of dudes that whenever we added the velocity in on them, they got up to the level 3, level 4, and they started having a velocity emphasis, that they would still see, even at a triple body weight squat, we still saw some improvements. But whenever it was a non-velocity component, a la 2000, 2006, over 2.2, never once. So you can't ever say never, but there was once or twice that we saw improvements there. Looking at change of direction and what influences it, that's going to be a manuscript I'm going to submit tomorrow. Looking at the 15 years of Mizzou, the first trial, right? So then we've got we've got prediction equations and what influenced it. So it's a massive, 7,000 word manuscript, and what influenced change of direction on different surfaces, which, it's going to give, in my opinion, the beauty of it is because I'm giving equations. If what we predict isn't what they're at, plus or minus the standard deviation, it's like, okay, there's an issue. We need to look at it. And why is it off? Is it body composition? Is it strength? Is it, ballistics? What is it? So then that should give some practitioners some room there. And then, there's a couple other things too that, just keeps popping up, man. I'm working on getting this device called Player Maker. They're here down in Miami Springs, and the guy that started OnStar and figured that out, right? He is a sports fan, and he got bored after he sorted to was it General Motors? Is that who? Also, yeah. I got to ask the vehicle people. Me, I don't give two shits what I drive most of the time. I miss having my truck, though. I will say that, but that's neither here nor there. That's completely irrelevant. He's a sports fan, and he wanted it for the next challenge. So then he designed this accelerometer that you put on each foot, and it goes on the shoe, and it samples at 1,000 hertz. And I'm going to try and look at some change of direction stuff with that. Like 1,000 hertz, man. Come on, that's what is catapult? Like 10? No, that's GPS. 60? I think they're at 60 hertz for their changer. Ted, you would know that better than I. What is their sample rate?
I think some of them are about 100.
100? Okay.
Yeah.
So then we're getting 1,000, or we're getting it at the foot rather than the center of mass. So then that might allow us to look at the foot kinetics. Kinetics as they're coming in and coming out, especially if we can overlay it with, because we got in the gate lab, we've got multi-axis force plates. But then again, I don't want to put the athletes on there and because they can create some shear force. So I'll probably do something with high-speed video and the accelerometers, the IMUs, rather. But, Ted, I want to pick your brain on that more so I don't reinvent the wheel and I'm not going about something stupidly. But it's looking at the foot rather than center of mass. So the asymmetry, I think, might be a little bit better because they measure both feet rather than looking at the rotation and predicting. Because it's always better to measure than it is to predict, right? Kind of like the Sayers equation, right? It's okay for predicting power, but it's far better to measure because power is the combination of force and velocity. So power is even a fluff metric whenever you get down to it. One of the things that I started doing is doing the graphs, so where I'm looking at 4 quadrants for how they produce force and velocity on the counter movement jump. And, I'm starting to look at this year, we're probably going to start with the athletes looking at doing the same Mizuno method. And I'm going to try and get a laser to look at contact times and things like that. But if I get, that's only if I can get it to integrate. And, looking at horizontal and vertical and force and velocity and the relationships, because I think power is something that Jason Lake calls it a fluff metric, and I don't necessarily agree with calling it fluff, but I think that since it's a derivative, you can get the same force with same power, high force, low velocity, or low force, high velocity. 2.5 times 200 is 500, and 500 times 1 is 500. So we need to know how is that derived, so then we know how to train them and how to change things. So that's and that is with what I'm talking about with that counter movement jump and how people respond to training. So if we typically if everybody just gives one blanket training program, people who are on that high end, and this is where I was trying to get at earlier before I got sidetracked by my own derailing, that some of the guys that are the super high velocity, maybe they actually are, the program might be detrimental. Or if they improve, it's in spite of the program and not because of the program. Or versus, these people that are in the middle, they are seeing improvements because of it. And these people at the bottom, who knows, right? Because those are usually the walk-ons that aren't going to see the field anyways. And I don't know if I'd spend a lot of time. I can spend a lot of time, looking to see what makes them better. But as far as a coach goes, they're not influencing your bottom line. Where are you going to even look, to try and improve, other than to make yourself look good on paper for the coach? So I got a ton of stuff in the works, and I'm staying busy. And it's between them and the kids, it's making the hairline go back and back and back. I think I might have to, join your guys' club here, but I've got dents in my head, and I don't think it's going to look very good if I take it all the way down. So, there'll be a lot of stuff coming out for the next several years. And I'm excited to get it out there and be able to talk about it more and more. But, the transfer index, I think that's something that most coaches could go and put in tomorrow. It's in every version of Zatsiorsky's Science and Practice of Strength Training. It's in the first, it's in the second, it's in the third. The downside to it is that you've got to apply some context for the numbers because, positive isn't always good. Negative's not always bad, even on the same number, right? Because sometimes if both numbers go down, so if your 40 time goes down and your body comp goes down, that gives you a positive, right? If you're, maybe you're thinking it should be negative, you just got to apply context for everything. What about the squat? Well, what if it stayed the same and your sprint got better? Well, what happened on your body comp? There's just a lot of factors going into it. So that might be why it's not as popular, or it's just because coaches don't want to do math. Math is hard. And, but if you've got an Excel anyways, you can calculate stuff. Shoot, you saw the profile. So Pat had his profile that he showed the coaches. I took the profile and I had all these equations for let's see how many extra columns did I throw on there. I've got that on my OneDrive here. I know I've got that. Data, football, course, now I say that and I can't find it. Here we go. See how many extra columns I calculated. All right, Pat's ended at V. And mine ended at BC.
Can you show? Do you have it? Is it de-identified?
Oh, not this one.
Not that one? Oh.
Yeah, I've got one that's de-identified, but it doesn't have all the different calculations on it. Because then I throw it into SPSS and I do them in there. Because then it's a little bit easier with the categorization. So like if you split the file, it'll do that for you versus having to go back through and do it for each individual one. So I don't think the columns will go as far because I had to break it down for the standardizing for each type. Was it offensive line only? Was it bigs? Was it, blah, 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 blah. But, I got sprint momentum off of 10, off of 40, force, sprint force, which some people will poo-poo on, but it's the same freaking turf. So, the coefficient of friction shouldn't vary between guy to guy. It's the same freaking shoe. It's the same turf. I don't care. But that's an argument that I got into with a bioengineer. But I calculated force and power and, of course, velocity for all of those and found that, hey, for the bigs, force mattered. For sprint, for the mids, power, which you think about it, well, they've got to be able to hit the big dudes. They've got to run down people, so they're going to be, a good hybrid in between. And then the skill guys, it was velocity. And then outside of for the mids, there was an agility test and a jump test too, and the same for the skill. And the R squared was only down to the 0.2s to 0.3s, so it's not super strong, but football is very skilled, and to be able to get that high of an R, which is low, right? But to be able to have that much, it's like, okay, this is the physical requisite abilities. If you're trying to play this position and you can't do this, you're probably going to suck. And that's one of those things that I need to get out there. I'm going to get poo-pooed on because the way that I calculated force and power, somebody who's got a engineering background, biomechanics background, they're going to pick that apart. But, I'll still, stand on it that it's the same surface and the same shoe. So I don't think it should matter. But so that's where the coaching and the researching kind of collide and butt heads.
Bryan, what did you ever do with that, the data you were collecting on neck circumference?
We didn't have enough concussions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So whenever you get down to it, so what I did was I looked at neck length, so occipital protuberance to the C7 prominence, neck circumference, and then I redneck engineered. Let's see if I still got it. Hold on. Nope. I don't have the wood anymore, but I took a blood pressure cuff and I wrapped it around a 2x4 to 1x4 laminated together, right, so that they had something to push against. And I popped it up to 40 millimeters of mercury, and then I had them pushed down, right? I started out with it wrapped around the bar and tried to push, but that's protraction, not deep neck flexion. And there's those studies that talk about the strength of the deep neck flexors. So we had 2 concussions. One of them was both of them were from car wrecks, right? And so the only people that got concussed, because we did a ton of neck work, I asked Rex if we could start throwing guys against the wall, and he wasn't having that. But the guys that the 2 guys that had concussion had long, skinny, weak necks, right? And the research that shows that stuff with the neck strength, there needs to be a caveat. I think they left it out, that you got to see the hit coming, right? Because if you can see the hit coming, you strengthen, you tense the neck muscles, and then that's going to slow the deceleration of the head. And it's the brain slosh that is causing the concussion, not the actual initial impact. And so the head, whopping around to the brain, whopping all around in there, sloshing around, whatever. But yeah, we just didn't have enough concussions, so that nobody is going to allow a study with 2 people to go through. Maybe that that thing, Martin Bouchette. He and somebody else started a thing that's like an online only, and it's changing all the time. I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to talk to Dr. Cohen. He's he told me about it, that they kind of got like it's not it's peer reviewed because everybody's looking at it and criticizing it, but it's not indexed or anything like that. That might be a place to send that.
So Ted, the way Bryan's mind works is, I remember we're on the sideline and it's during the game. He's got his stopwatch out. Like, what are you doing? Timing kicks? Like, no. Like, what are you timing? He said, I'm timing how long the offense is off the field. I'm like, what? Why would you time how much time the offense is off the field? He said, well, I've got a theory that if the offense is, so soon as we get ready to punt the ball, so right before that offense comes off the field and they're sitting on the bench, he's timing that and then stopping the time once they go back on the field. I said, what are you doing? He said, I have a theory that I can predict if we're going to have a 3 and out or not.
Yeah, 6 minutes. If they're sitting more than 6 minutes, they were much more likely to go 3 and out.
So, And so I think it was, I thought you said it was 8, but I know it was something.
It might have been 8. I don't remember right now. So, 6 or 8, somewhere around there.
Yeah, but he was charting it and was able to figure out when we had a 3 and out. So he discovered that if the offense is over on the bench for more than 8 minutes, the chance of us having a 3 and out was some great percentage.
Yeah.
So we need to do something about that.
Yeah, well, the coaches didn't want to do anything about it. I get them up and move, and then fucking C is yelling at me what are you doing?
So what we did, I said, well, who does it matter for the most? Because skill guys are probably going to be on special teams. So we just broke it down. So let's just get the offensive lineman to do a couple of, knee tucks or foot stomps on the ground or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, just get them up and get them moving.
Get them up.
Fire out of their stance.
After a certain time, I said, make sure the offensive coordinator isn't talking to them, the offensive line isn't talking to them. Get the guys up. We got to explain to them, like, how are we going to explain this to players? Like, you can't tell them, hey, if you sit over here, we're going to have a 3 and out. You can't say that.
Yeah.
So we say, hey, with the offensive lineman, just trust us. We want to make sure that your blood circulation gets back going. It's going to increase your chance of going out there and just being ready to go and dominate your opponent. But the whole time, Bryan's got his stopwatch. He's like, hey, it's 8 minutes. We got to get him.
Let's go. Get him up.
Get him up.
Get him up.
So,
yeah.
Unpublished research. Right?
Yeah, unpublished and not publishable. And, the coaches may or may not buy into it, as we've found out. What are you going to do?
I had my first year with the Rockets. We would start the third quarters bad, and then we had a stat that, like, guys coming in off the bench, they struggle to get going. So I had this new thing. I take this approach that I used to use in baseball to keep guys ready, because obviously they're just sitting there, right? And, so I had this little warm-up area. This is during a game. I had this little warm-up area, and I had 3 bikes set up. I had a power play. I had all these different tools to help them get loose, bands set up. There's their own little warm-up area. And I had back that first year, we had a few younger guys. It's not our vet team that we have this year or in the last couple of years. So I pulled about 4 guys during a timeout. It was right towards the end of a timeout. I made sure that they were listening to the coaches, and then I pulled them off, and I had them start riding a bike. It was like middle of the first quarter. Hey, you're going to do this routine once a quarter. Not 1 minute into it, I had 2 of the vets looking over going, what the is going on over here? It's like, get your ass back on the bench and root your players on out there. I was like, all right, it's tradition, man. So sometimes it's tough to reinvent the wheel when, it definitely takes some education and all that. But So you got to be on the bench cheering the players on. So now it's like you give them little tools here and there to keep loose when they stand up, right? A little, move the feet, quick feed, little leg swings here and there, timeout kind of. But sometimes it's not the most efficient way of doing things,
Absolutely. Well, Bryan, you have anything else you want to drop on us before we wrap this show up?
No, actually, we probably ought to wrap it up because my wife just gave me the.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know. I know her well, and I don't want to be on her bad side. So we should probably wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, thank you once again. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure talking some shop with you, and especially right here in your wheelhouse. This is Research to Reps Roundtable, covering velocity-based training. I think we should all be excited about when this one comes out.
Yeah, I am too.
Very good. Great job.
Thanks, guys. Good seeing you, Bryan. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime.
All right, man. Get home. Get safe. Be safe.
All right, y'all. Will do.
Y'all take care. Have a good night.